Welcome to My Autistic Experience, a podcast where we explore the unique journey of living on the autism spectrum through the eyes of my favorite co-host and son, Aaron. I'm Dr. Divina Lopez, a pediatrician, autism expert, and most importantly, I'm Aaron's mom. In each episode, we'll share stories, insights, and reflections from Aaron's life, starting from his early toddler days to his adventures as a preteen. Whether you're an autism parent, a professional, or simply curious about life on the spectrum, you're in the right place. So let's dive in together and celebrate what makes each and every experience extraordinary.
Thanks for listening. Now let's get started.
Hello, and welcome back to the My Autistic Experience podcast series. I'm your host, Dr. Divina Lopez, and I'm here with my son, Aaron. He is the best co-host that I have had. He has chosen not to be on camera today because we're going to be discussing meltdowns, and he feels like this is a difficult subject to talk about. Right, Aaron?
Yes, I'm sorry for those who are looking forward to seeing me in this episode. Maybe next week. And if anything, you could just look at past episodes. But yes, I get very sensitive with this topic, and sometimes when I'm discussing it, my eyes water up, and I'm pretty sure you guys know what that means. So please don't get concerned if you hear my voice getting trembly.
So I thank you for being so brave and for even showing up on this episode, although I know it's a hard topic for you, right? So as we know, so many people who are on the spectrum experience these meltdowns, and a lot of people describe them as being tantrums. And actually, even when I was talking to Aaron about this episode, he was like, a meltdown is a tantrum. And I'm like, no, it isn't. It's different. So before we get into all of that, I just want to remind everyone that this episode is brought to you by the Tiny Mighty Autism Parent Planner. And I'm going to show you the really unique pages in the planner that you can use for the unwanted behaviors that happen during a meltdown and how to just make them more manageable and to give your child the tools that they need in order to manage those meltdowns in the moment. And I want to just tell you that with the planner, you also get a whole video library that teaches you how to use each and every one of the unique pages, and that you get that through scanning this QR code.
It also has a special part about meltdowns.
It's a whole page just dedicated to monitoring meltdowns. That way you can track some really important information that will be helpful in managing them and keeping track of them and learning how to decrease them. All right, so let's get into the interview portion of this podcast. Aaron, are you ready for the questions? He's just walking around and stimming a little bit. I think it's just helpful for him, especially talking about this topic. There he goes. So, Aaron, can you describe what a meltdown feels like for you?
Well, it feels very upsetting. Although it feels like once you get everything out, you feel better. But like still, you feel very sad and disappointed and sad and well.
What usually causes a meltdown for you?
Sometimes when, let's say, something happens and I need to stay with my dad for an extended time, and then I'm not going to see my mom for as long. I'm not going to see her for as long as I usually do. I might get really sad. And
so that's a trigger for you, right?
Yeah, it's a trigger for me. And
how does your body feel before, during, and after a meltdown?
After a meltdown, it feels a little more calmed, but I still feel a little sad. And during a meltdown, all of the emotions is just coming out, and it's just spilling out of my face, my arms, my legs, my entire body. And then before a meltdown, that's when I'm triggered.
And what's the difference between feeling frustrated and having a meltdown?
Feeling frustrated. Sometimes if I get too frustrated, I might cry a little bit because I might feel like I might never get the hang of it.
Mm.
And then when I have a meltdown, it's just really sad, and it really feels like sadness takes over your whole body.
I feel like you almost lose control.
Exactly.
Like you can't even get control of it. Where more of like when you're frustrated, I've noticed that you're able to like calm yourself down without me even getting involved to help. But I feel like when you're having a meltdown, you like to be left alone.
Exactly.
And then after a period of time, after you've gone through the whole thing, then you come and you look for me, right? You agree with that?
Yes, I agree with that.
And how do you feel when people don't understand your meltdowns?
I definitely don't feel that good.
Have you ever been told to just calm down, Aaron? Or how does that make you feel if somebody tells you, Aaron, just calm down instead of allowing you to go through the meltdown?
That triggers me 10 times as much.
I've noticed it gets worse when people try to control it for you, right? And what would you want us as your parents or your teachers or your friends to do when you're having a meltdown?
Well, I wouldn't do it around my friends. I would only do it around adults.
But let's
Probably
say one day in the future it does happen around friends or something. What would you want them to do when you're having a meltdown?
try to help me feel better.
How could they do that?
I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not that sure.
You're not that sure. From my experience, like I said, I feel like I have to leave you alone for a period of time and then let you go through it. And then you usually will allow me to come back and try to hug you and stuff like that seems to be helpful. What are some things that help you calm down when you're overwhelmed?
What are things that help me calm down when I'm overwhelmed?
What are some of the tools that you use yourself?
Just going through it. And usually at the end of the meltdown, I just want my mom to hug me. At the beginning and in the middle, I just want to be left alone. But then toward the end of it, I want mom to hug me.
I also noticed that you usually want to be left alone, so you'll go into your room. Sometimes you need to yell and scream. Sometimes you want to throw something. Sometimes you want to be in your bed with all your comfy things, right? And do you prefer being alone or having someone near you during the meltdown?
Like I said, maybe alone for the first and in the middle of it, but toward the end, the only person that I only want toward the end is my mom. If it's anyone else, it's not going to work.
And are there tools like deep breathing or listening to music that help you?
Sometimes that also works.
Mm-hmm.
And if maybe sometimes if someone else comes in, if they do something to cheer me up and then I eventually get cheered up, that also works sometimes.
What do you wish people knew about meltdowns so they could help better?
Maybe that a meltdown isn't a tantrum and that there are differences. So I want them to know that. And
what advice would you give to other kids that struggle with meltdowns?
What advice would I give to them? Well,
that's a hard one, right?
Is
well, would you want them to have some tools like you that help?
Yeah, maybe deep breaths. Someone there to help you sometimes, and for that, yeah.
How have you learned to handle meltdowns differently as you've gotten older?
As I've gotten older? Well, that's kind of hard.
I've noticed a huge difference. When you were younger, you couldn't even talk. Remember when you were younger, you would do this thing. Sometimes you would act like you were a dinosaur when you were going through a meltdown.
Because sometimes I felt like I wanted to turn into a giant Tyrannosaurus Rex. This was when I was little. I felt like that I wanted to turn into a Tyrannosaurus Rex and grow giant and destroy everything in my path.
So there has been a big transition from when you were younger and having meltdowns to now. And I think part of it is that now you know how to express your emotions better. So my advice, if I were you, to give to other kids who experience meltdowns is to be able to learn how to express their emotions better because it helps them to understand their emotions better, right? And to also have something where what are the things that make you feel better during those meltdowns, right? Maybe you
Yeah.
could have like a little meltdown corner or something in your room, a place where you feel safe with all your really comfy things. That might help, right? What's one thing parents should remember when their child is having a meltdown?
That's kind of a hard one, if I'm being honest.
Mhm.
Maybe to not yell at their kids.
That's a good one, actually. Not yell at them, right? Because it's almost something that takes over you and it's hard to control at the moment. I think it's important for parents to practice with their kids when they're not in the meltdown mode, how to take care of the times when we are in a meltdown, right? I think for me, it's always important to know like what are the things that make you feel better, right? How can I help you with something that might be soothing to you to help you get out of the meltdown faster? And I also give you your space,
Yes, exactly.
right? And I think one of the biggest messages is that meltdowns are not tantrums, right? Tantrums are what you see in a toddler when they're having that explosion of an emotion because maybe they cannot verbalize it, and so you see the behaviors. Meltdowns at that age are very similar, right? But meltdowns in people with autism can occur for their entire life. And it has a lot to do with the emotions being expressed in a certain way. They feel maybe, do you ever feel like your emotions are like trapped in your body or something?
Yeah, sometimes.
All right. So meltdowns are not tantrums. They are the body's way of reacting to feeling overwhelmed, right? So when you're feeling overwhelmed, right, with too many things or too much stress, then this is how a person with autism may express that overwhelm, right? And everyone can learn ways to support and understand autistic children better. If you understand what a true meltdown is, it's not a deliberate reaction to the parents or anything like that. So don't take it personally, parents. I know that we judge ourselves when they're happening. We're afraid that other people are watching and thinking that perhaps we are not great parents. What I do want to encourage you to do is to have some good resources like my planner, because in my planner, I do provide this behavior intervention toolbox. And in the behavior intervention toolbox, we have what to do for escalating events. And I love this page so much because if there's another caregiver or something, it's an easy way to share what are the things that trigger them, what happens during those moments, what are the behaviors that you see, and then what is the plan or the strategy in order to help mitigate the meltdown. The other page that I think is really useful for meltdowns is the feel good checklist. And in the feel good checklist, we have all of these different options to try, and we even have some blank spaces for the things that might be very specific for your child, but it's ways of soothing them, ways of making them happy, and just the ways that we can support our children during those moments that they're having meltdown. And then my other favorite page is the meltdown monitor, because in the meltdown monitor, we can actually keep track of when it's happening, because sometimes there's a pattern, right? And you don't know what the triggers are, so you got to figure them out. What time of the day? They always happening on Mondays at 3 o'clock because they come out of school and maybe their last class is a class that really just gets them down. How long did it last for, right? Because the goal is always to decrease the time that it happens for. What was the intensity? I always use the scale of 1 through 10 with Aaron. On a scale of 1 through 10, how are you feeling? You can use actually the faces if you ever seen that. And then you want to know, like, what are the triggers? What happened that triggered your child to get them into that meltdown episode, right? So these are all the things that I would suggest as a resource. This is why I came up with all of this, because dealing with the meltdowns can be extremely challenging. They were really hard for me. And I remember going through them all alone all the time and having to explain to family members or friends, hey, just ease off of him, allow him his space. I can go through this with him. Just give us some time alone. Those are also sometimes conversations that you need to have ahead of time when you're going to visit somebody, especially during the holidays and you're going to visit family, because these are the things that happen all the time. So thank you so much to my co-host, Mr. Aaron, for being vulnerable today and sharing this information with other people. I'm so proud of you, puppy. You did a good job. So signing out, we'll see you for episode number 5. Thanks for joining us on My Autistic Experience. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and that it gave you a little insight, hope, or even a smile. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new episode. And if you're looking for a way to bring more ease and organization to your parenting journey, check out the Tiny Mighty Autism Parent Planner. It's packed with tools to help parents like you advocate for your child and find peace in the chaos. You'll find the link in our show notes. Until next time, remember, every experience is mighty in its own way. See you soon.
This episode is brought to you by the Tiny Mighty Autism Parent Planner, created by my mom, to help parents like yours stay organized, advocate for their kids, and find peace in their journey.